The rest of the week transformed into an intensive education that Sarah had never imagined possible. Each morning, she completed her regular maintenance duties in half the time, eager to join Marcus and his team for training that pushed her understanding far beyond textbook theory. Thursday morning brought a new challenge. Marcus had set up a complex shooting scenario that simulated real-world law enforcement situations. Multiple targets were positioned at varying distances, some partially concealed behind barriers. The exercise required rapid target identification, precise shooting, and quick transitions between positions. This is similar to what you might encounter in tactical law enforcement situations, Marcus explained. Academic knowledge is crucial, but you also need to make accurate decisions under time pressure. Sarah watched as each team member completed the course, noting their different approaches and techniques. Rodriguez favored aggressive, rapid engagement. Thompson was methodical, taking slightly more time for each shot but achieving perfect accuracy. Each style was effective, but reflected different strengths and tactical philosophies. "Your turn," Marcus said, handing Sarah the rifle she had become familiar with over the past few days. The scenario felt different from the controlled precision shooting she had practiced earlier. Sarah had to identify which targets represented threats, engage them in order of priority, and move between shooting positions while maintaining accuracy. Her heart rate increased, but she found herself applying the mental discipline Marcus had emphasized. The first target was straightforward, a clear shot at 200 meters. Sarah engaged it successfully, then moved to a kneeling position for the second target, partially concealed behind cover. The third target required prone shooting from a different angle, forcing her to quickly reposition and reacquire her sight picture. When she finished, Marcus checked her results through the spotting scope. All targets engaged successfully, good time, solid accuracy. You're developing tactical instincts to go with your technical skills. Sarah felt a sense of achievement, but also recognized how much more there was to learn. It feels different when there's time pressure and decision-making involved. That's the difference between range practice and operational application, Marcus explained. You've proven you can handle both the technical and mental aspects. That's rare. That afternoon, Colonel Beck joined them at the firing line. Sarah had been so focused on training that she hadn't noticed him observing her progress throughout the week. His expression was thoughtful as he watched her complete another precision shooting exercise. "Sarah," Beck called her over after she finished. "Can I speak with you privately?" They walked to the office, where Beck poured 2 cups of coffee and settled into his chair. "I've been watching your development this week. Quite a transformation from the maintenance worker I hired 3 years ago." Sarah wasn't sure how to respond. Marcus has been an exceptional instructor. Marcus is good, Beck agreed, but instruction only works when the student has the right foundation. You've shown capabilities that go far beyond what most people could develop in a week of training. Beck leaned forward. "I've had conversations with law enforcement agencies over the years about candidates for specialized positions. What you've demonstrated this week, combined with your academic background, would be of significant interest to several agencies." Sarah felt excitement and nervousness in equal measure. "What kind of positions?" "Tactical units, federal agencies, specialized investigation work. Organizations that need people who can combine analytical thinking with practical skills under pressure." The conversation opened possibilities Sarah had never seriously considered. She had focused on local law enforcement, but Beck was describing careers that seemed almost beyond her reach just a week earlier. Friday morning brought the SEAL team's final day of training at the range. Marcus had planned a comprehensive exercise that would test everything Sarah had learned throughout the week. The course combined long-range precision shooting, rapid target engagement, and tactical movement between positions. "This is your final exam," Marcus said with a slight smile. "Show me what you've learned." Sarah approached the exercise with confidence she couldn't have imagined on Monday morning. She had internalized the shooting fundamentals, developed an understanding of tactical thinking, and learned to trust her analytical abilities under pressure. The course that had seemed impossibly complex on Tuesday now felt like a clear sequence of problems to solve. Her performance exceeded even her own expectations. Every shot found its target, her transitions between positions were smooth and efficient, and her target prioritization showed tactical understanding. When she finished, the SEAL team was waiting with expressions of genuine respect. "Outstanding," Thompson said. "You've covered more ground in 1 week than most people do in months of training." Rodriguez nodded agreement. "Your shooting is solid, but, more importantly, you think like a professional. That's not something that can be taught." Marcus walked over with Sarah's final target, marked with precise shot groups that demonstrated consistent accuracy. "These results speak for themselves," he said. "But, I want you to understand something important." Sarah waited, sensing he had something significant to share. "When I first observed you working here, I saw potential that you didn't recognize in yourself. This week hasn't been about teaching you to shoot. It's been about showing you capabilities you already possessed but hadn't developed." Marcus paused, choosing his words carefully. "You have the analytical mind, physical coordination, and mental discipline for work that matters. The question is whether you're ready to pursue opportunities that will challenge those capabilities." That afternoon, as the SEAL team prepared to leave, Marcus handed Sarah a business card. "This is a contact at the FBI Academy in Quantico. They have programs for people with your combination of academic background and demonstrated practical aptitude. If you're serious about law enforcement career advancement, this could open doors." Sarah looked at the card, feeling like she was holding a key to a future she had never imagined possible. "Would you recommend me for something like that?" "I'd recommend you without hesitation," Marcus replied. "You've proven you can perform under pressure, learn complex skills rapidly, and maintain professional standards. Those are exactly the qualities specialized law enforcement agencies need." As the team loaded their equipment into vehicles, Thompson approached Sarah one final time. "Keep developing these skills," he advised. "What you've learned this week is just the beginning. You have potential for work that could make a real difference." After the SEALs departed, Sarah found herself alone on the range for the first time in a week. The quiet felt strange after days of intensive training and constant learning. She walked the firing line, thinking about how dramatically her perspective had changed. Colonel Beck found her there as the sun was setting. "Different week than you expected?" he asked. "Completely different," Sarah admitted. "Monday morning, I thought I was just replacing targets. Now I feel like I understand something about myself that I never knew existed." Beck nodded. "That's what good training does. It reveals capabilities you didn't know you had. The question is what you do with that knowledge." That evening, Sarah sat in her apartment with Marcus's business card on the table in front of her. She researched FBI training programs, reading about selection criteria and career paths that had seemed impossibly out of reach just a week earlier. Now they felt like realistic goals. She called her college advisor, explaining the week's events and asking about academic programs that would complement her new practical skills. She researched tactical training courses and advanced marksmanship programs. For the first time since starting college, Sarah felt like she had a clear direction that excited rather than intimidated her. The transformation wasn't just about learning to shoot accurately, though that was part of it. It was about discovering that theoretical knowledge could translate into practical capability, that confidence could be built through competence, and that opportunities existed for people willing to develop both intellectual and practical skills. 3 months later, Sarah submitted her application to the FBI Academy. Her academic record was strong, but now she also had letters of recommendation from Marcus and Colonel Beck, along with documented evidence of exceptional performance in tactical training exercises. 6 months after that, she received her acceptance letter. A year later, Special Agent Sarah Martinez graduated from the FBI Academy with commendations in both academic study and practical training. She had specialized in ballistics analysis and tactical operations, combining her original interests with the skills she had discovered during one transformational week at a Texas shooting range. During her graduation ceremony, Marcus attended as her guest. "Remember when you said you weren't sure if you were cut out for the real challenges of law enforcement work?" he asked. Sarah smiled, thinking about how much had changed since that conversation. "I remember thinking I was just someone who replaced practice targets. You were never just that, Marcus replied. You just needed the right opportunity to discover what you were capable of. Looking back, Sarah understood that the most important moment hadn't been her first accurate shot or her successful completion of tactical exercises. It had been the moment she decided to trust in her ability to learn, grow, and meet challenges she had never imagined facing. The young woman who had spent 3 years quietly replacing targets had discovered she was capable of precision shooting, tactical thinking, and professional performance under pressure. But, more importantly, she had learned that capabilities could be developed, confidence could be earned, and that sometimes the most significant transformations began with simply being willing to try something new. As she began her career as a federal agent, Sarah carried with her the lessons from that week at the shooting range. Technical skills were important, but they were built on foundation of analytical thinking, consistent practice, and willingness to push beyond perceived limitations. Most importantly, she had learned that expertise was not a destination but a continuous process of learning, practicing, and applying knowledge in increasingly challenging situations. The rifle that Marcus had placed in her hands had been more than a tool for learning marksmanship. It had been the key to discovering capabilities she never knew she possessed, and the confidence to pursue a career path that would allow her to serve something greater than herself, exactly as her father had always encouraged her to do. The next morning, Sarah arrived at the range with her textbooks and a nervous energy she couldn't shake. She had barely slept, her mind racing with questions about what Marcus had planned. The idea of moving beyond theoretical knowledge both thrilled and terrified her. Colonel Beck was waiting in the office when she arrived. Kane talked to me yesterday about including you in their training observations, he said, looking at her seriously. This is unusual, Sarah. These men are operating at a level most people never see. You sure you're ready for this? I think so, Sarah replied, though her voice betrayed some uncertainty. I mean, I want to learn. My studies have been all theory, and this could help me understand how things work in practice. Beck nodded slowly. Kane's got good instincts about people. If he thinks you can handle it, I trust his judgment. Just remember, these aren't games they're playing. Everything they do has real-world applications. When Sarah reached the firing line, Marcus and his team were already setting up equipment. Today their setup looked different, more focused on individual marksmanship rather than team exercises. Several high-powered rifles were laid out on tables, along with spotting scopes and other precision equipment. Morning, Marcus greeted her. Ready to see how your ballistics knowledge applies in practice? Sarah nodded, clutching her textbooks. I brought my notes like you suggested. Good. First, I want you to observe Thompson working on long-range targeting. He's going to engage targets at 400, 600, and 800 meters. I want you to predict what adjustments he'll need to make based on current wind conditions and what you know about bullet trajectory. Sarah opened her ballistics textbook, reviewing the formulas for bullet drop and wind drift. She observed the wind flags placed at intervals down the range, noting how they moved differently at various distances. Using her theoretical knowledge, she made calculations for each target distance. At 400 meters, with the current crosswind, I think he'll need about 2 minutes of angle left windage adjustment, Sarah said, referencing her notes. For bullet drop, maybe 4 minutes elevation above point of aim. Marcus checked his own calculations, looking impressed. That's very close to what Thompson will use. Let's see how theory matches reality. Thompson, a lean man with calm demeanor, began his shooting sequence. Sarah watched through binoculars as he engaged each target, making precisely the adjustments she had predicted. The accuracy was stunning, each shot hitting within inches of the target center at distances that seemed impossible for such precision. Your calculations were almost perfect, Marcus told her after Thompson finished. You have better instincts for this than most people who've been shooting for years. The compliment meant more to Sarah than she expected. For 3 years, she had felt like she was just maintaining equipment for people doing important work. Now, for the first time, her knowledge seemed valuable and applicable. Can I ask something? Sarah said. In my textbooks, everything is presented as exact formulas. But, watching Thompson, it seems like he was making small adjustments beyond what the math would suggest. Excellent observation, Marcus replied. Textbook ballistics give you the foundation, but real-world shooting requires reading conditions that change constantly. Thompson was compensating for micro-wind changes and other variables that you can't calculate ahead of time. As the morning progressed, Marcus had Sarah observe different aspects of precision shooting. She watched Rodriguez work on rapid target engagement, noting how he balanced speed with accuracy. She observed how the team communicated target information, using precise terminology that connected to concepts from her forensic studies. During lunch break, Marcus sat with Sarah in the shade of the range building. "You mentioned wanting to work in law enforcement," he said. "What specifically interests you about that career path?" "I want to do work that matters," Sarah explained. "My father always talked about serving something bigger than yourself. After he died, I felt lost for a while. Studying criminal justice gave me direction, but sometimes I wonder if I'm cut out for the real challenges of that work." Marcus studied her thoughtfully. "What makes you doubt yourself?" Sarah hesitated. "I've spent 3 years watching highly trained people practice skills I've only read about. Everyone here seems so confident, so capable. I sometimes wonder if I'm just fooling myself thinking I could handle the pressure of real law enforcement work." "Confidence comes from competence," Marcus said. "And competence comes from practice. You've built a strong knowledge foundation. The question is whether you're willing to develop practical skills to match it." After lunch, Marcus led Sarah to a different part of the range where his team had set up a precision rifle on a stable shooting platform. The weapon looked intimidating, much larger and more complex than anything Sarah had seen up close. "This is a .308 precision rifle," Marcus explained. "Similar to what many law enforcement agencies use for specialized operations. Based on your theoretical knowledge, you understand the ballistics principles. Would you like to see how it feels to apply that knowledge practically?" Sarah's heart raced. "You mean actually shoot it?" "With proper instruction and safety protocols," Marcus said. "You've demonstrated solid understanding of the theory. Time to see if you can translate that into practice." The next hour was unlike anything Sarah had experienced. Marcus methodically explained every aspect of the rifle, from basic operation to advanced shooting techniques. He showed her proper body positioning, breathing control, and sight alignment. Everything connected to principles she had studied, but now she could feel the practical application. "The key is consistency," Marcus explained as he helped Sarah position herself behind the rifle. "Every shot should be executed exactly the same way. Breathing pattern, trigger control, follow-through. The rifle is capable of extreme precision, but only if the shooter is consistent." Sarah's first shot missed the target completely, the bullet impacting somewhere in the backstop beyond the target range. She felt embarrassed, but Marcus remained patient. "What did you do differently from what we practiced?" he asked. Sarah thought about it. "I think I jerked the trigger instead of squeezing it smoothly. And I probably held my breath too long." "Good analysis," Marcus said. "Understanding what went wrong is more important than the miss itself. Try again." Her second shot hit the target, though far from the center. The third shot was closer. By her fifth shot, Sarah was beginning to understand the rhythm Marcus had described. It wasn't just about aiming and pulling the trigger, it was about controlling every variable in her body and mind. "Better," Marcus observed. "You're starting to develop a consistent shooting process. Most people take much longer to find that consistency." As the afternoon continued, Sarah's shooting improved steadily. Marcus introduced concepts like reading wind changes and adjusting for different ranges. Each new challenge connected to her theoretical studies, but now she could feel the practical differences between textbook descriptions and real-world application. "There's something I need to tell you," Marcus said as they prepared for Sarah's final shooting session of the day. "When I first saw you working here, I noticed how you moved. You have natural awareness of your surroundings, good spatial sense. Those aren't common traits." Sarah was curious about his observation. "What do you mean?" "Some people are naturally suited for work that requires precision under pressure," Marcus explained. It's not something you can teach, it's something you either have or you don't. You have those instincts. For her final shots of the day, Marcus set up a target at 300 meters, a distance that had seemed impossible when she first looked through the scope. But, now, after hours of instruction and practice, Sarah felt confident in her ability to apply everything she had learned. She followed the shooting process Marcus had taught her, calculating windage and elevation adjustments, controlling her breathing, and smoothly pressing the trigger. The shot felt perfect as it left the rifle. Through the spotting scope, Marcus confirmed what Sarah hoped. Center mass. Excellent shot. Sarah felt a rush of accomplishment unlike anything she had experienced in her academic studies. All the theoretical knowledge she had absorbed over years of study had finally translated into practical capability. How do you feel? Marcus asked as they packed up the equipment. Different, Sarah said honestly. Like I understand something about myself that I didn't know before. Marcus nodded. That's what happens when you discover you're capable of more than you realized. The question now is what you do with that discovery. As the SEAL team prepared to leave for the day, Thompson approached Sarah. Heard you put together some solid shooting today. That's impressive for someone with no previous practical experience. Marcus is a good instructor, Sarah replied. Marcus is an excellent instructor, Thompson agreed. But, instruction only works if the student has the right foundation. You've got good instincts for this work. That evening, driving home from the range, Sarah felt like she was processing a completely new understanding of herself. The confidence that had seemed so natural in Marcus and his team didn't feel entirely foreign anymore. She was beginning to understand that competence could be developed, and that her academic knowledge provided a stronger foundation for practical skills than she had realized. She spent the evening researching law enforcement training programs, but now with a different perspective. Instead of wondering if she could handle the challenges, she found herself planning how to develop the practical skills that would complement her theoretical knowledge. For the first time since starting college, Sarah felt like she had a clear path forward, one that connected her academic interests with practical capability she was only beginning to understand. Sarah Martinez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she walked across the dusty shooting range. The Texas sun beat down mercilessly, making the metal targets shimmer in the heat. For 3 years, she had worked at Lone Star Tactical Range, replacing worn-out practice targets and keeping the facility clean. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills while she finished her degree in criminal justice. At 24, Sarah had always been fascinated by law enforcement and military precision. She grew up watching her father clean his hunting rifles and listening to his stories about discipline and focus. But life had taken different turns. Her father passed away when she was 18, leaving behind medical bills that forced her to take any job she could find. The shooting range was owned by retired Marine Colonel James Beck, a gruff but fair man who appreciated Sarah's work ethic. She arrived early every morning, checked the targets, swept the shooting lanes, and handled the basic maintenance that kept the range running smoothly. Most customers barely noticed her as she worked quietly in the background. That Tuesday morning started like any other. Sarah loaded fresh paper targets into her cart and began her rounds. The range was busier than usual, with several military contractors practicing for overseas deployments. She recognized most of the regular customers, but today there were new faces among the familiar ones. As she replaced a shredded target at lane 12, Sarah noticed a group of men in tactical gear setting up at the far end of the range. They moved with a precision that caught her attention. Everything about them was deliberate, from how they arranged their equipment to the way they communicated with subtle hand signals. These weren't weekend warriors or casual shooters. The leader of the group was a tall man with piercing blue eyes and short-cropped brown hair. He carried himself with quiet confidence, checking his rifle with practiced movements. Sarah had seen enough military personnel to recognize someone with serious training, but there was something different about this man. He seemed to notice everything around him, including her. Sarah continued her work, trying not to stare. She had learned to be invisible at the range, understanding that most shooters preferred not to be distracted. But, as she moved between lanes, she found herself glancing back at the tactical team. They were running complex drills, transitioning between different shooting positions with fluid efficiency. During her lunch break, Sarah sat in the small office behind the range, eating a sandwich while reviewing her criminology textbook. She was studying ballistics and forensic analysis, hoping to eventually work for the police department or maybe even the FBI. The theoretical knowledge fascinated her, but she often wondered how it would apply in real situations. Colonel Beck walked into the office, pouring himself a cup of coffee from the ancient machine in the corner. "Busy day out there," he commented, nodding toward the range. "Got some special operators running training exercises. Navy SEALs, if my guess is right." Sarah looked up from her book with interest. "SEALs? Here?" "They need somewhere private to practice some specialized techniques," Beck explained. "Leader of the group is Chief Petty Officer Marcus Kane. Heard he's one of the best marksmen in his unit. They'll be here for the rest of the week." The name stuck in Sarah's mind as she returned to work. Marcus Kane. She had read about Navy SEALs in her studies, understanding them to be among the most elite soldiers in the world. The idea that such highly trained individuals were practicing at her workplace both excited and intimidated her. As the afternoon progressed, Sarah found herself working closer to where the SEAL team was training. She tried to focus on her tasks, but their exercises were unlike anything she had seen before. They practiced shooting from moving vehicles, behind barricades, and in low-light conditions. Every movement was calculated, every shot purposeful. At one point, while replacing a target stand that had been damaged, Sarah accidentally knocked over a box of spare equipment. The crash echoed across the range, causing several shooters to look in her direction. Her face burned with embarrassment as she quickly gathered the scattered items. "Need some help?" a deep voice asked behind her. Sarah looked up to see Marcus Kane standing nearby, his rifle held casually but safely pointed away. Up close, she could see the intensity in his eyes, but his expression was kind rather than annoyed. "I'm sorry," Sarah stammered. "I didn't mean to interrupt your training." "No interruption," Marcus replied, kneeling down to help her collect the scattered targets. "Accidents happen. You work here regularly?" 3 years, Sarah said, surprised by his casual tone. "I usually try to stay out of everyone's way." Marcus handed her the last of the targets, studying her face for a moment. "What's your background? You move like someone with training." Sarah was confused by the observation. "Training? I just work maintenance here. I'm studying criminal justice in college, but that's about it." "Interesting," Marcus said, though he didn't explain what he found interesting. "Well, thanks for keeping the range in good condition. Makes our job easier." He returned to his team, leaving Sarah puzzled by the brief interaction. She had never thought of herself as moving in any particular way, certainly not like someone with training. But something about his comments stuck with her as she finished her shift. That evening, Sarah found herself researching Navy SEALs online, reading about their selection process and training requirements. The physical and mental demands seemed almost superhuman. She wondered what it would be like to have such focus and capability, to be trusted with missions that others couldn't handle. The next morning, Sarah arrived early as usual, but found herself paying more attention to the SEAL team's training. She noticed how they communicated without words, how they moved as a coordinated unit, and how their shooting accuracy was far beyond what she typically saw at the range. During a break in their exercises, Sarah was replacing targets when she overheard part of their conversation. They were discussing different rifle configurations and how various modifications affected accuracy at different ranges. The technical detail fascinated her, connecting to concepts she had studied in her ballistics courses. "You seem interested in the equipment," Marcus observed, approaching while his teammates prepared for the next drill. Sarah felt caught eavesdropping. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to listen in. It's just that I'm studying ballistics in school, and what you're discussing connects to what I'm learning." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Criminal justice?" "Yes, with a focus on forensic analysis. I want to work in law enforcement eventually. What do you know about long-range accuracy?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious. Sarah found herself explaining concepts she had memorized from textbooks, discussing bullet drop, wind compensation, and the physics of projectile motion. As she spoke, she noticed Marcus listening intently, occasionally nodding or asking follow-up questions that showed he was testing her knowledge. "That's impressive theoretical understanding," Marcus said when she finished. "Ever put any of it into practice?" "Not really," Sarah admitted. "I've watched a lot of shooters here, but I've never actually fired a rifle myself. My father taught me basic gun safety with his hunting rifle when I was younger, but that was different." Marcus was quiet for a moment, seeming to consider something. "Would you be interested in seeing how theory translates to practice?" Sarah's heart rate increased. "What do you mean?" "My team is working on precision shooting exercises this afternoon. If Colonel Beck approves, you could observe more closely. Might help with your studies." The offer was unexpected and exciting. Sarah had always wondered what it would be like to understand shooting from more than just a theoretical perspective. "I'd love that, if it's not too much trouble." "No trouble," Marcus said. "In fact, having someone with academic knowledge might give us a different perspective on what we're doing." That afternoon, instead of just replacing targets, Sarah found herself standing behind the firing line, watching the SEAL team practice precision shooting at various distances. Marcus explained what they were doing, connecting their practical techniques to the theoretical concepts Sarah had studied. "See how Rodriguez adjusts his breathing before each shot?" Marcus pointed out. "That's about minimizing body movement during trigger pull. And watch how Thompson calculates wind compensation." Sarah absorbed every detail, asking questions that showed she understood the underlying principles. The SEAL seemed impressed by her grasp of ballistics theory, even if she lacked practical experience. As the day ended, Marcus approached her again. "You've got a good foundation of knowledge," he said. "Ever consider applying it in a more hands-on way?" "I'm not sure what you mean," Sarah replied. Marcus looked thoughtful. "We'll be here the rest of the week. If you're interested, and if you can get time away from your regular duties, you could learn more about practical applications of what you've been studying." Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Working with Navy SEALs was far beyond anything she had imagined when she started her shift that morning. But something about Marcus's quiet confidence made her want to learn more, to see if she could bridge the gap between theory and practice. "I'd be very interested," she said finally. Marcus nodded. "Good. Tomorrow we'll start with basics. Bring your textbooks. You might be surprised how much theory and practice inform each other." As Sarah drove home that evening, she couldn't stop thinking about the day's events. 3 years of routine work had suddenly become something entirely different. She had no idea that her academic interests would intersect with real-world military training, but the opportunity to learn from such experienced professionals was too valuable to pass up. She spent the evening reviewing her ballistics notes, preparing for whatever Marcus had planned. For the first time since starting work at the range, Sarah felt like her knowledge might actually be valued and applied in ways she hadn't imagined possible.